So if you've been paying attention to AI all over the past 2 years, you've probably noticed that the conversation keeps circling back to a few technical terms: APIs, webhooks, and MCP. These words get thrown around in product pitches, strategy meetings, and pretty much every LinkedIn post about AI adoption. And most people I talk to have a fuzzy sense of what they mean, but not a real working understanding. And that's actually a problem because these three concepts are the foundation of pretty much every AI system that connects to other tools and actually takes action in the world. Here's the thing. You do not have to be an engineer to get a real feel for how these work. You just need someone to break it down for you in plain English without talking down to you and with examples of real tools you already use. And once you kind of have that basic understanding, the whole AI conversation just feels a little bit easier to make sense of. So today, that is exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to walk you through all three of these terms, APIs, webhooks, MCP, with some quick demos along the way. And by the end of this video, you will have a solid understanding that makes the rest of the AI landscape just a little easier to make sense of. Let's get into it. All right, here is our game plan today. So first, we're going to talk about APIs, which is basically how software has communicated with other pieces of software for like 20 years. And then we're going to talk about webhooks, which I would say is kind of like the reverse direction of an API. And then finally, we're going to talk about the newer concept of the three, which is MCP. Let's get into it. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Sunny, and I'm a serial founder now on my fourth startup. I'm also a former senior engineer at Bloomberg and Shopify, and currently an adjunct professor at Columbia Business School, where I teach tech and AI. Listen, I've been in this industry for more than 15 years, far before AI was in the picture. And I've also made all the mistakes so you don't have to. And my goal for today's video, and really all my videos, is to help people like you make sense of all the shifts we're seeing with technology, especially as it relates to the AI tooling landscape. Ultimately, my ultimate goal is to enable you to really maximize the value that you can extract from the tools that we now have available to us. Let's get started with our first step. API actually stands for Application Programming Interface, which is a mouthful and, in my opinion, does not help anybody understand what it actually is. So let me give you the plain English version. An API is basically one application asking another application for something and getting an answer back. That's really all it is. One asks, one answers. Request and response. And here's the thing. If you've been interacting with APIs your whole life without even knowing it, every time you open your banking app and you see your balance, that's an API call. Your phone asked the bank's servers for your balance, and the bank answered. Every time you click that sign in with Google button on some new app you're signing up for, that's an API call. The app is actually asking Google to confirm that you are who you say you are, and Google is actually responding with yes. So, all right, so what I want to do next is I want to actually demo what I mean by an API. We're actually going to run an API request in a Claude Code session. And specifically, we are going to grab the stock price of IBM stock, and we're going to use an API called AlphaVantage. I'll leave the links in the comments below, but AlphaVantage is a great API where you can actually get a free API key and be able to pull data from that API, which connects to real stock market data. Of course, there's many stock market APIs here. I find AlphaVantage to be quite a bit user-friendly. Another thing to note is I have set this up in advance of this video. So I set up an AlphaVantage folder. Currently, it only has one file on it, which is the environment file. And in that file, I have something called an API key. The API key is essentially like your username and password for your AlphaVantage account in this case. You typically do not want to store or submit API keys in any chat session, whether it's Claude Code, Cowork, or Claude, or just regular Claude chat. So that's why we leave it in the .env, in the environment file there. If you're curious about how to set this up, I cover this in some of my other videos. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to literally paste this prompt. And what I'm going to say here is call the AlphaVantage API and get the current stock price for IBM. And then I indicate that my API key is already set up in that environment file as this variable. So that way it can pull that API key from there automatically. All right, let's see what happens. Okay, so the first thing it's asking me to do is it actually wants me to confirm that we're going to run this command. I'm going to go ahead and hit allow. Great. So we have a quote. Let's actually see what's going on under the hood. So it's actually running code underneath this, which is really cool. It's not just connecting directly. It's actually running a small piece of code. In this case, it's a curl command. If you don't know what that is, no worries. Just know that that is almost like a coding language. And it's literally pulling the stock price from a specific API endpoint. Again, if you don't know what an endpoint is, no worries. Just know that it's pulling from AlphaVantage itself. And here we have a quote with all of the information there. And that's really it. That is an API. I asked AlphaVantage's server for something. Their server responded, one request, one response. And this is kind of the pattern. You ask for structured data back. And it's essentially the way that software and systems communicated with each other. And here's the thing that's actually kind of wild when you think about it. For the past 20 years, pretty much every piece of software that you've used has been communicating with other pieces of software constantly, always in the background, all day long. The modern internet essentially is a giant mesh of applications calling each other's API every second of every day. And most of us have just been kind of using these tools without really ever thinking about it. And from my experience, once you start seeing APIs, you kind of can't unsee it. Every integration in your company's tech stack, every this tool talks to that tool kind of feature, every dashboard that pulls from somewhere else, it's all through an API. It's in some ways the plumbing of the modern internet. All right, so let's talk about webhooks, which in my opinion are basically the opposite direction of an API. So with an API, you ask and the other system answers. With a webhook, you subscribe and the other system tells you when something happens. But what I mean by that is instead of your app having to constantly ask, hey, did anything change yet? And asking that over and over and over again, which, by the way, is exhausting and wasteful, you just tell the other system, hey, let me know when something happens. And then they tell you. And that could be in 10 seconds, that could be in 3 days. It depends on when the event actually happens. So let's make this a little bit more concrete. So here are some examples from from the real world that maybe you didn't realize would be webhooks. So when Stripe sends a payment confirmation to an accounting software like QuickBooks, for example, that is typically a webhook. A customer pays, Stripe then fires a little message to QuickBooks that says, hey, payment cleared, here are the details, and then QuickBooks updates automatically. Nobody had to ask, Stripe just pushed the update when it happened. Now here's another example. Let's say someone places an order on a Shopify store, and the warehouse management system instantly knows to pick and pack that order. That, again, is typically done via webhook. The moment someone checks out, Shopify fires a message to that warehouse system saying, hey, new order, here are the details, now go fulfill it. The warehouse system didn't have to keep asking any new orders yet a million times. Shopify just told it when it happened. And that's how modern e-commerce actually runs. Every platform you've ever used, Shopify, Stripe, your email provider, your analytics tool, is usually firing webhooks at other systems all day long, quietly making things happen in the background. Okay, now let's talk about MCP, Model Context Protocol. So this is the newest of the three, and it actually came out of Anthropic, the company behind Claude, of course, back at the end of 2024. And it's the one I really want you to understand because it's the reason why AI suddenly feels so connected to everything. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this one. So first, let me explain the problem that MCP was designed to solve. So up until recently, very recently, here was the reality. Every time you wanted an AI system, whether that's Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, to be able to work with a new tool, somebody had to build that connection by hand. And worse, every AI vendor had their own flavor of how that connection worked. So connecting Claude to Salesforce was a custom build. Connecting ChatGPT to that same Salesforce instance, you had to rebuild it for OpenAI's way of doing things. Every AI company, every tool company, every enterprise in the world was basically building the same bridges over and over and over again in slightly different ways, and none of them really talk to each other. And that's why MCP was created. Simply put, MCP is a standard. It is one protocol that basically says, here is how AI models and tools should talk to each other. And as long as the AI speaks MCP and the tool speaks MCP, they can work together. No custom build, plug and play. Now, you've probably heard of the shorthand USB-C for AI. And that's actually a pretty good way to think about it. Remember, like 10 years ago, every device had its own weird charger. Apple had one, Android had like 3, your camera had its own thing, and then USB-C came along and suddenly one cable worked for almost everything. That is essentially what MCP has done for AI. So what I want to do next is I want to do a little mini demo with Claude Cowork, and I'm actually going to use their connection functionality, which operates through MCP to connect to a Google Calendar. So I'm here in a new session. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this plus button, and I have some connectors already here, but I'm actually going to add a new one. So I'm going to click Add Connector. I'm going to search for Google Calendar, and I'll hit this plus button. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to tell me to choose a specific account. So I'm going to click on one of these, and then I'm going to approve it, and then authorize it, and hit continue. And we're now going to go back to Claude. So now we have granted access for Claude to access our calendar. So now that we've set that connection up, I'm going to go back into a new Claude Cowork session. I'm going to click this plus button, and now I should see that my Google Calendar is connected because it's toggled on. Now, just to confirm, I'm going to pull all of my events over the past 3 months. Please pull all my events over the past 3 months from my Google Calendar. All we're doing is we're just confirming that the connection has gone through. So I should see actual events from my calendar. Okay, perfect. It has pulled all these events from my fictitious Google Calendar, so we have connected this appropriately. And now you've seen how to actually take full advantage of MCP. All right, so before we wrap, I want to spend a few minutes on why this stuff matters beyond just the definitions. So here's the thing I think is worth sitting with. Pretty much every valuable thing AI is going to do in your work life involves connecting to something else. Your calendar, your email, your CRM, your files, your company's internal system. An AI that cannot connect to anything is really just a chatbot. An AI that can connect to systems where your actual work lives, that is where the real value shows up. With MCP specifically, though, the cost of connecting AI to a new tool just dramatically dropped over the last 18 months. Things that used to take an engineering team months to build can now be done in a few days, maybe an afternoon, and that changes what is worth building. It changes what's worth automating. And honestly, it means a lot of the things that you've been waiting for AI to be able to do at work are probably going to become possible very soon, if not already possible. So if you're someone who works with AI, maybe you're a PM using it for product work, maybe you're a consultant and using it for research, or you're an analyst using it for reporting, or you're just someone who is curious about this stuff, understanding these technical concepts are actually what lets you start thinking about what is possible. Not because you need to build any of it, just because once you know what the connection types are, you can see where the opportunities are hiding in plain sight. All right, so we have now reached the end of this video, and I know that this one was a little different than what I normally do. Less building, more foundational concepts. But honestly, I think this is the stuff that makes everything so much easier. Once you understand how software connects, a lot of what AI is doing right now stops feeling like magic and starts feeling like something you can actually reason about. So here is your homework. Specifically for this next week. The next time one of these three terms shows up in something maybe you're reading or in a conversation, the three terms being API, Webhook, or MCP, see if you can identify what's actually being described. Just that little bit of noticing is where we can start building that deeper understanding. Now, if you stuck around till the end of this video, I appreciate you. I will see you on the next one.